Hello, my beautiful light beings. Welcome back to the Magic Exists podcast with Danny Margot. I have a wonderful guest here. Her name is Rosa Hope, PhD. She is an award winning astrophysicist, mentor, and mystic who bridges science and spirit. Welcome, Rosa.
Thank you for having me, Danny. I'm so excited to hang out with you today.
Yeah, a little bit about Rosa. She has been invited to share her insights across the US by leading scientific conferences and spiritual communities alike, addressing the simple yet profound question: how do we human better? As a certified transpersonal hypnotist and integration mentor, she guides transformational journeys that empower others to connect with their deepest wisdom, embody spiritual truth, and live with clarity, authenticity, and purpose. Oh my gosh, so juicy.
I love this question, how do we human better? And it's like the first thing I want to put out there is like, this is not a question that I answer. This is the question that I am contemplating. It is the journey of my lifetime, and I think many others as well. So I love beginning there because it's all we do. It's all we talk about is try to answer that question for ourselves, you know?
Absolutely. I love that so much. And the first question I like to ask all my guests is, what is your strongest clair and how does that come through in your work and in your life?
I would call it clear cognizance. It's sometimes we call it something like getting a download or a knowingness. That is definitely the one that has been strongest in my own life, which is funny because I've also spent an enormous amount of time studying, which is like the opposite of clear cognizance. It's like figuring it out as we go, reading what other people have learned. But when it comes to my personal spiritual experience, for example, some people get really strong visionary experience. Some people hear things. For me, it's like I get these downloads. It almost feels like a little ball of information just kind of comes in, and mentally I'm in there unpacking it, being like, what all is inside of here? But that's definitely been where my biggest awakenings have taken place, is when it feels like I get a major download and then I get a lot of time to sit with that and unpack it.
I love that so much. I just had a coaching session last week with my coach, and she was like, "You're like a mad scientist. You want to get to the root of everything and understand how everything works." And so that's why I was so intrigued by you, because you really bridge the science and the spirit, which I think is something that I am still moving into, and I think it's really a beautiful journey. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I was actually a bio major in college, but I realized that wasn't the science that I was like, wanting. So it's really cool to kind of now reflect back, and I'm moving into like the medical intuition world, and to kind of come
Mhm.
back to the body and the anatomy and how spirit plays such a big role in this. And so my question for you is like, what is your story? How did you get to where you're at, and kind of how did you integrate that science and spirit?
That's an incredible question, with a sort of odd answer. So, ever since I was little, I have just been really curious. I love learning, and the real issue is that I didn't realize there were supposed to be any boundaries about what was interesting. So I was just as interested in math and physics as I was in esoterics, paranormal activity, ESP, ghosts, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, I didn't see or know, I guess, intrinsically that there was a dividing line anywhere. So if you were to sort of like look at what I was reading about, what I was doing, what I was learning, really my entire life, there's just no dividing line. It's not just intellectual stuff. I was also studying performing arts and music and all this stuff too. So I just have always had this kind of insatiable yearning to take advantage of what is here. There's so much to enjoy. There is so much to learn. And I just never saw one area as like less worthy of my time and efforts than another. So in a sense, it's like I've always bridged those things without meaning to. And only as an adult uh, did those interests start to turn into first like a way of living and then a way of serving others. So that was really the journey. When I went to school for physics, I was already in my late 20s. So I had already been doing a bunch of other stuff. I'd lived all over the world. My spiritual awakening had already very much begun. And I have a friend named Evening Star who I remember talking on the phone with because I was like, I think I want to go back to school for physics. Like, I want to understand how reality works. What is this? How did it come into being? And who better to ask than the people that study this full time, the physicists, right? And she was just laughing at me saying, we're soul sisters. We've gone down the rabbit hole pretty deep, in the past. And she was just laughing at me being like, Rosa, if any of us in our little girl group was going to go be a PhD physicist, it would be you. So like, go on, little star child, like go learn from those old white guys, like just do your thing. So in a sense, it's like I went to become a physicist because I had these spiritual leanings and this deep curiosity to begin with. It wasn't the other way around. It's not like I was a hardcore materialist and then saw the light. Like, saw the light in my 20s at music festivals, figured that out. And then all the physics actually came after that.
I love that so much. And that's something really I'm trying to share more, that like we can be these spiritual, enlightened mentors or teachers or, heart-led leaders, yet we can still embody the music festivals or the wine or whatever it is that like is interesting you. It's like about all of you and being that human. How can you human better? How can you bring more peace and love and joy and play into your life and whatever works for you? And so physics is something that really interests me. And I know you know a lot about quantum physics and how it may or may not tell us about reality, alignment, manifestation, reincarnation, and the soul's journey. I know that's a lot there, but is there anything about
Everything, literally everything. But okay. Yeah.
how is quantum physics supporting us in being human?
Ooh, that is not the question I expected, but I love it. So, okay. When I talk about quantum mechanics and what it actually tells us about reality, it's not the end of the story. And I think in the spiritual community and in the spiritual industry, quantum language is used a lot to talk about what we're doing or what we're trying to change or what we're trying to achieve. But as someone who has actually studied those things, when people talk about like choosing your new future out of the quantum field or something like that, I don't interpret that literally at all. It's not that you can't change your identity or change your future. You absolutely can. But rather it being a quantum phenomenon, I think those shifts actually tell us a lot more about consciousness than they do about quantum physics. We like the language of quantum physics, but it's used in a lot of ways that actually don't represent what the science is telling us. We do understand that on small scales, material reality is not the way Newton taught us. It's not like a bunch of billiard balls bouncing off of each other. It's mostly vacuum and a lot of probability distributions, but that's on a very small scale. And when you get to a larger scale, we have things like people, and you don't think about yourself having a probability distribution, like there's this much chance I will appear on the other side of the door is not something like normal people experience. So in general, using quantum language to talk about macro phenomenon, I think those concepts are really helpful. I don't take them literally. I think about them from a way of like, how do we use our free will? How do we apply our consciousness to change what's happening in our lives, to change our perception of reality? Those are very, very powerful things. They are very much backed by science too, whether it's neuroscience or something else. We know there's something there, but as someone coming from that field, I would argue that we don't actually have an understanding yet of how all of this is connected. We have a lot of ideas, but we actually haven't like proven anything. Like we know a lot about how the universe works on many different scales, but the connection between consciousness and the impact consciousness has on physical reality, people use quantum mechanics to try to explain it, but the explanation's not complete yet. That's not to say it won't be. But one of the things that I'm going to say a lot of emeritus physicists, which is guys that don't have to worry about tenure and stuff like that anymore. These are old guys who are basically retired and can do whatever they want with their time now. A lot of those people are now spending a lot more time trying to study consciousness and try to figure out what kind of mathematics can describe consciousness as perhaps fundamental. Rather than having the quantum field being fundamental, what if consciousness is fundamental instead? And based on some of those ideas, that's kind of where I'm leaning. And I want to say, like, full disclosure, I'm okay being wrong. And that's part of being a good scientist, too, is that as we learn more and get more evidence, we should be able to adjust our beliefs about how things work. But those ideas I find a lot more compelling. And those ideas actually resonate a lot more with my own personal experience in some people call it panpsychism, but what that really means is that everything has consciousness, whether it's a dead leaf on the ground or your favorite teddy bear as a child or the sun, but like everything actually has consciousness. And that idea is actually encapsulated in some of these new ideas coming out of these more fringe sides of theoretical physics about consciousness being fundamental. Everything does have consciousness if it's fundamental. But that is the connection I really make. It's actually less how does quantum mechanics support us being human, except conceptually I love it because it helps us think about what's possible and it helps tell us that pretty much anything is possible. That's what I love about quantum mechanics. But it's actually consciousness that I am contemplating more now. And I mean, that's probably why I ended up being a hypnotist, actually, is because we're working in the space of consciousness. I'm not in the lab doing lab experiments. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like the direction my life has taken is in pursuit of understanding consciousness better. And that's just a reflection of my beliefs that I think that is where we will find more answers.
I love everything you said here, and a couple of things like really stood out to me. And I remember listening to this podcast where I forget the name of this gentleman, but he was like, "Oh, is a rock conscious?" And he's like, "Well, if you're talking or holding the rock, consciousness exists in that moment." And so it was like I was so mind blown, and I was like, "Yes, this is like what I'm talking about." But okay, when you talk about like the macro, and we're kind of like looking at the bigger picture to really understand who we are and our purpose and where we are in this world. Oftentimes for me, I can get very lost in the big picture and of like
Hmm.
my soul's journey and of my soul's purpose. Oh my goodness, I've lived like hundreds of thousands of millions of lives, and like, how does this work and how am I conscious here? But I can access the Akashic records and see these past lives that are actually parallel lives. And so I love the understanding of all the quantum and all the physics and the math. And sometimes I can get lost. And so it's very much like what I've found is like, let me learn more, but let me understand how I can like move through the world and be that best version of me. And
Hmm.
I know you are an integration mentor. And I think this is such a beautiful thing because you mentioned about like you were learning and you love to learn, but it feel your energy is like, if you're watching the YouTube, is like so grounded. And so like I definitely think there is this like level of taking in and learning and like growing and like really being in the midst of that. And then on the other side is like, how can you take that energy in and see how it resonates with you and your daily life? And how can you maybe be a better person? How can you use those ideas to fuel your purpose or your mission in a bigger way? And so I'm curious, like, what are some tools to like integrate all these things we're learning? People are taking classes and we have this energy of go, go, go. And so like how can we support other people in like creating that spaciousness for those downloads to come, for that spiritual
Hmm.
awakening to come?
Yeah. So there are a lot of things that you said in there that are, could practically be my mantra, though. Um, I know that we're in the information age. Okay. So all of us are able to learn almost anything we want just with a cell phone in our hand right now. We are in information overload. Why wouldn't we get overwhelmed? And of course, I've spent my life really dedicated to learning. But that's something really specific to me. So, like, if you look at my human design or if you look at my gene keys, it's like check, 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 check. Like all of it checks out. And so much of it is about my personal intellectual pursuits. Not everyone needs to do that. None of us actually need to know everything. And when it turns into radio static, it actually becomes a distraction from what we're really doing here. So after all these years I've spent learning about all these different things, because it's like I've been studying mysticism since I was a child. So that's like decades of study of mysticism. I've been studying mysticism longer than I ever studied physics. So it's like I have an astrophysics PhD, but I've been doing that for less time than I've been studying spirituality and mysticism. Isn't that weird? I should have been like a reverend or something. I don't know. Maybe I should have done something else. But my point is, like, after getting all this information, what does it all boil down to? What is the commonality between all of these things? I learned that science can tell us a lot about how, which is interesting and can help us create physical things that work. That's awesome, but that's not the whole story. That doesn't give us any meaning or purpose. It gives us skill. It gives us the ability to manipulate our environment and to bring our ideas to life. That's very important. But then the meaning and the purpose is what helps us want to be here. It helps us embody our whatever it is we are. It helps us bring it here. It helps us embrace our humanity because we are enjoying ourselves. We feel purposeful. Life feels meaningful. That's never going to come from science. That comes from all this other stuff. It comes from spirituality. It comes from philosophy. It comes from friendship. It comes from family. So when I try to synthesize all this stuff and anchor it, what I'm really asking is what are the messages that all these things are sending? And it's this one question that I'm still chewing on and talking about all the time, which is, how do we human better? We decided that this is how we wanted to work, whatever that means. This is how we wanted to grow or have experience or whatever it is, or whatever our personal mission is that we came here to do. We came to do it in this way, by being a human being. And so my concern, at least over the last few years with the spiritual community, is that there's been a lot more interest in using spirituality as escapism and to go way out over yonder. I mean, I've done astral projection. I do transpersonal hypnosis. We are taking our consciousness way out of the human body on the regular. That's like normal for me. But it's not all out there. It's here too. And I think that's my biggest message, is like, the work is here. We go out there to get information and experience to help us do this better. And by better, what do I mean? Do I mean there's something wrong with you? No. I mean, like, you feel the call to become more expansive, to become more loving, to become more present. That doesn't mean anything's wrong with you now. You're just wanting to expand your capacity. And sometimes you don't, and me too. So it's like, sometimes I'm like, I'm very comfortable right here. I don't want to be more expansive right now. This is awesome. I love this. But if you hang around and do your thing, the call will come again. The call to expand, the call to develop a part of yourself that you haven't worked on in a while. You know what I mean? We keep getting these invitations to grow and expand in whatever it is we are, in love, in presence, in compassion. And we're in that process anyway. If you don't want to engage with it, it's still going to happen to you. I find that engaging with it provides a smoother road, shall we say. But when it comes to integrating, what that really means is making sure that your roots, your human, earthbound roots, are at least equal to how expansive you are out into the cosmos. So whatever your state is, if you've spent a lot of time up there, if you don't have any roots, your little cosmic tree's going to topple over at the slightest little breath of wind. You don't want that. You want to try to do both together. And what grounding and growing roots means is embracing your human experience. It means not being in denial of who you are. It means not being in denial of, like, what is being asked of you? What is the role that you play in society, in your community? So if things are wonky and nothing feels right, that usually happens toward the beginning of your journey because you've been playing out your life according to what your parents said you should do or what the movies or society told you should do. So it's like not really you. Like the role in the life you're in isn't a reflection of what's within. But once you get there, there are a lot of people out there who can help others through that process. But it's like once we get there, once we're more aligned with who we are, you don't want to turn away from that and just wish you were back out in the stars because we came here to do this. So you're actually missing a lot of opportunities by staying focused out there instead of seeing what's here for you. Why did you come here? You didn't come. I mean, the remembrance is important, but you didn't just come here so you could remember. You could remember just fine before you came. Like you came here to do something else. You came down here to do this, whatever that means for you. So the purpose of integration is to cut through the confusion, figure out what it is you are like doing here. How do you embody all that you've learned? And it's not about having a list of facts, and it's not about telling a stranger on the internet that they're wrong and you're right. Like that is not it. Integration is about embodiment. It's about anchoring. It's about embracing your life. It's about loving yourself. It's about taking care of yourself, being the nurturer for yourself, and being able to hold this experience in a way that is sustainable and that is showing love, not just for yourself, but for the collective, for the community. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's this balancing that might seem really grounded and physical, but you need that there to bring this here. If you want this to be reflected in your external world, you need to be a channel to bring it here, if that makes sense.
This is so magical, and I really think the divine synchronicities of you being here in this moment is so like sacred because I literally had a conversation with one of my divine Akashic record students this morning, and I held a master class last night about galactic, origins and like the different layers of dimensions and kind of like where we access the Akashic records. And a student kind of felt at the end like, well, I feel like being human has only been something I've been grateful for the last year. And, in the past,
Mhm.
I'd want to escape or leave. And so she was like, this is kind of making me feel like, what's the point of being human if I just want to keep going out there and seeing all these past lives and understanding all these parts of me. And so I really loved what you said about like remembrance is important, but that's not the key to humanity. And ultimately what I shared with her was like it is beautiful to remember who you are and how this permission slip of like why you're doing water magic here now, these witchy things. It's like, oh, I did that on this other planet and I have that connection, and it's just a beautiful part that you are grateful for of yourself for having built that and learned those beautiful gifts and tools that you're able to in-source now. And the ultimate goal is exactly what you said, and it's like really being able to embody that love and compassion for yourself. And that's actually something I'm currently integrating more, where it's like, yes, I want to use all these things, but how can I like use it to support me and earth? And how can I bring more light to earth right now? And I feel like I've only been awakened, quote unquote, for like 5 years. So it's very new to me. And so, well, I don't know if this is like a forever thing that I will always be moving into and anchoring more into. And I love that word anchoring because that's like a new word that just came to my field like 2 weeks ago. Anchoring more into me, my authenticity, my purpose, my balance, and all those beautiful things.
Yeah, well, there's so much that is really important about what you just shared. I really resonate with that experience. I spent a lot of my early 20s feeling like your masterclass student felt, which is like, this sucks. I'm ready to go. And the way in which I was ready to go wasn't like, I'm going to check out. It wasn't that. I was thinking about it from a spiritual perspective. I want to close all my karmic loops. I want to finish whatever I was supposed to, whatever wheel I'm on that keeps me human. I'm done. I'm super done. I'm not coming back. That was totally how I felt. And interestingly, I'm in such a different place now. That was before my Saturn return. And my Saturn return like wrecked me. It like wrecked me. And I really got down to like like that really just like rock bottom is like a funny term. That's really it's like don't be fooled. Sometimes you can still go down from there, but like it really took me down to like rock bottom, but it also took me back to a blank slate. And at first I felt despair because I was like everything I had built was gone and everything I thought I was going to be was gone. I still had some good friends though, including my friend Evening Star, who like I still love now. Like I mean, we've stuck together through all these years. But the other thing I had was the wisdom that I had gained through all the hard knocks. And so I wasn't actually starting from scratch. I was starting from a blank slate, but I was a much more masterful creator than I was before. And I could set my intention around the type of experience I was going to create from there forward in a way that would have been harder to do if I still had all the trappings of that other life I had been building. And I had been building it based on a confused and distorted idea of who I was and what I actually was looking for. So in a sense, it's like I needed to go back to ground zero and start over again. That's also a really great place to start putting down roots and to start anchoring to support the growth that you're about to embark on. So in a sense, it's a place of potentiality if you can see it for what it is. I still have to take time to grieve. Like grief is such an important part of releasing a path, any path. Even if it was an aligned path, sometimes there are still reasons to choose a different one. But my life is in such a different place now. Here I am, like 13-ish years down the road from when that happened. And I don't feel like checking out at all anymore. I love being here. I love y'all. Like I love humanity and I'm much more in touch. My walls had to get broken down, but once they did, I began to realize so much of my grief and anger was because humanity is so confused, you know, as a whole. And but my anger actually taught me, why am I angry? If I didn't care, I wouldn't be mad. I'm angry because I actually love the world. I love us, and what we are capable of is not reflected by where we are at right now. That being said, though, these are the times we came here for. That's not an accident. That was another big thing I had to contend with, was that I was so mad that this is when I came. I was like, why am I not incarnated in the 60s so I can just run around in a caravan or something like that? I actually had a therapist once, like regular old workaday therapist, that told me that I was born in the wrong era because of the types of things I wanted to do and the ideas that I had. But that I don't believe that. I actually don't believe that. I came here for this, just like you did. We came here to try to be lighthouses and be supportive. You know, not everyone needs to be of service all the time, but I think some of us, that is the role we came here to show up and to help people, or to try to uncover the truth, or to try to help people find themselves. And as I have been able to embrace that call that I hear in my heart more and more, my life is more enjoyable. I like doing this. I like talking to, you know, wonderful people that are heart-centered and heart-led. I love my family. I love my little house and my little garden, you know, like that's what I mean. Is like I'm in a different place because I have embraced what about being physical means something to me. The things that bring me joy, the things that help me embody that. Because if you're not enjoying yourself, you're never going to embrace being human, because it sucks. And I guess my big message about embodiment and about integration is that here's a couple things to think about. Joy. Where is there joy in your life? If you can't find it, it's time to get serious about that. And it's not just like going out on the weekend or something. You kind of need a slow drip every single day. You need a little bit of something gives you delight. Like sometimes I have my little like cuppa in the morning that is like warm on a cold day, and I dance in the kitchen over it because it's fun and it tastes good and I like it. So like, where is your joy? Make sure you get some of that every day. Otherwise, what's the point? The other thing is your heart. If you're not leading your life from a heart-centered place, then it's going to be impossible for you to shine love into the world, or to be love, or to bring compassion in, because it's going to be like blocked off. And opening it up feels like heartbreak for me. I think for other people too. So it can be a little scary, and it takes courage to be a more open-hearted person. I think it's worth the journey. I think it's worth well, I mean, I'm not going to say it's not fear. I have definitely experienced fear when I'm trying to expand my heart's capacity. It will always feel scary, because having an open heart means people can hurt your feelings. But one of the things I learned from my sweet girlfriends back in the day is that we are resilient creatures. Even we hurt each other by accident, just by choosing the wrong words or being pokey because you're in a bad mood. Like, it's going to happen, but we are resilient creatures. We we can rebuild it. Like, if you get your feelings hurt, you can recover. It doesn't mean to stop letting the light out. You want it to shine out for people. You don't want to stop letting the light in. It's like the two-way street. There's reciprocity there. If you can shine out, it can shine in. If you close it off, it can't get in and it won't get out. So there's this process of like presence and showing up for people, showing up for yourself, for your community, but also making sure that you're resourced enough to do that. That's kind of the center of all integration work, I think. Like, once the confusion part is kind of over, it's about, what do I do with this? And what that comes down to is like two really big kind of spiritual messages and lessons that are here for everybody, which is that we are here to relish this experience, even the hard stuff. And that's a little tricky, but like, you can get there. And the other thing is to be here for each other. We are a collective, and awakening is collective, and healing is collective. All the work, ultimately, we do our part, but the big picture is always collective. So it's like these two things together. And I just have this like vision in my heart. If we can figure it out, it's going to be like party time here, having like a great time. So there's a part, yeah, that's sort of at the bottom of that's the core of it for me, is that I have seen the progression in myself that has allowed me to taste what that feels like. So I know it's possible. But now it's about, how do we create a world together where more people can have that experience?
You touched on so many beautiful things, and a couple things I want to reiterate and share is like, leading with an open heart, I think is number one. It's like your heart is the connection, the channel to your soul, to the clarity of why you're here. And so if a lot of people, they come to me to find their purpose or their mission, that's kind of like what my signature reading is. And so what I share is everything you just described. It's, how can you embody more of your light without the fear, without being scared. And it's okay to be fearful and scareful, but it's not to judge that part of you, right? It's like, that is part of your wholeness. That is the human experience. And for me, the Pleiadians convinced me when I was hiding out in Sirius B to come support Earth. So I know there is like a reason why I'm here during this awakening, and having this idea of why I'm here is supporting that. And so leading with the curiosities, the joy, the desires are going to help align you, because if you don't know where your purpose is or where it lies, you're not going to just jump in a week and like, oh, this is what it is. It's, you have to experiment. And for me, that's very much figuring out and understanding what the journey is and allowing it to shift in every season, and being okay with that, which can be a really hard pill to swallow in this like 3D kind of thick, slow patience, energy. But one thing that I've been noticing with a lot of light workers, and I know you said the lighthouse, we're all trying to be the lighthouse for those around us. We are awakened for a reason, and maybe, being the black sheep of a family, or maybe being different. And there's a reason for that. And I truly believe that. And so you talk a little bit about in your intro that you sent me, the secret to an effective cash flow. A lot of light workers have this like money wound, and I think it can stem from different roots, and it could be not good enough or not feeling worthy of the business, or who are they to share their light? Why is their light important, not others? And I think there is this like rooted energy with that money wound. So I'm curious about how you developed that and what advice you'd give to a light worker or someone who just wants to bring more love into this planet to support them financially like that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This was such a big part of my work, like just a couple years ago. Um, because I mean, just full disclosure, I have a lot of issues with capitalism and all this other stuff. Like, and I think part of it is that I have learned so much about like economic systems and stuff like that, that it's like I know a lot of how it came into being and its history and all and its cost, it's environmental cost, it's human cost. And for someone who is actually quite soft and tender, it's really hard for me to hold that. So I was in really strong denial of being within this system and within this country for a long time. In fact, a lot of the anger that I carried as a young person rooted directly from that, as it turned out. But part of my work has been to transmute that. Again, I say your incarnation is not an accident, and that includes where you are in the society that you are embedded in. So even though it can, I'm not going to pretend this is easy work. It certainly wasn't for me. But for me, that transformation, that transmutation, particularly of that anger, came from a place of trying to understand this is where I came in. This is where my life is. This is where my family is. I know that I'm where I'm supposed to be. So if I'm supposed to be here embedded in this system, how does that work? How does this make any sense in the context of who and what I am and the work I feel called to do? That includes things like, I'll call it acceptance, not acceptance of like, this is the way it always has to be. It's not that. Acceptance that I have to be resourced in order to be in presence in service of others. There's no way around it. If you are a martyr and if you are bearing the burden of poverty, it's going to be much harder for you to show up for your people and serve them. There's no two ways around it. And there are many different ways, sort of universally, to be resourced. But in our society, there is a real nuts and bolts aspect to this, and that involves cash flow. And the ability to have access to resources is gatekept by cash flow in our society. So the way I came to understand this for myself is to understand money as energy exchange. And that seems really simplistic, but that's what actually helped me the most, is that it also kind of represents attention too. But taking that into account and kind of changing my internal conceptualization, you don't have to agree to what money is for everyone, but you need a working framework for you that's going to be supportive of your life and your mission. And for me, that meant thinking about it in this new way and saying, if it represents energy exchange, it's not about the same things as my society tells me it's about. And if I want to be resourced, I have to figure out what that means. So for me, that actually meant doing some math and being like, I have a budget, and like, this is what my lifestyle costs, and this is what my kids' tuition costs, and all this kind of stuff. I had to do all of that. Maybe not everybody does, but because I have people who depend on me, that was a big part of it. But actually figuring out what my needs are. How do I sustain myself? And I'm not talking about bare minimum. I mean sustainable. What is sustainable for me and the family I support? And then looking at the work I do. And honestly, like, here's a really simple exercise. So you work with people who are kind of getting started and are being of service to others. I checked in with myself when I was doing client work. And I started to realize that when I was done with a session with somebody, I was feeling drained or I was feeling bitter or resentful or something like that. And I realized that part of that was connected to money, for example. But it's this bigger picture of saying, like, I want to show up for them in the best way possible. I never want to feel bitter or resentful about my work with others. It is the most important thing in my life to do well by the people I am here to serve. And so that's where I want to be. That's the state of being I want to embody when I'm doing that. So something's wrong. If I'm feeling drained or resentful, that means the energy exchange isn't right. And that's the thing I started experimenting with and saying, well, when does it feel good? When do I leave a session going, oh, man, that was great. That's how I want to feel. And so that was where I began. That's a really simple exercise because all you're doing is asking, how do I feel when I finish my client work? Like that's not complicated. But then it was figuring that out for me. And at that time in my life, what it meant two things actually. One thing was I did change my pricing, but I also changed my offering. There were two things that had to change to bring it into balance. One part was the external part coming from them, and the other was the internal part coming from me. So the adjustment was made in balance too, in a place where I could finish my work in a day and go, that's great. It's happening. We're doing it. Good job, everybody, So in a sense, like that is a really small snippet of like a much bigger process for me in understanding working with money in a different way that opened up a lot of things. But also I have always been so independent that it was hard for me to receive also. And that's like kind of a different conversation. But I think a lot of women have difficulty receiving because we are trained in our culture to do it all for everybody else. But again, this is something that this is an active practice for me that I have not totally mastered. It's still really hard on my ego to accept help from people, but it's like I know that I am working on it. I know that it's something asking me to work on it because that's another piece of this equation too, is feeling comfortable when you're not used to receiving even like gratitude or compliments or help from other people. Like that's part of it too. So in a sense, it's good to have someone like you, Danny, to like talk to about where you're at and what your challenges are, because it helps you know what to work on. Because again, it's like for me, I can't work on everything at once. Most people can't, but it has been a journey for me. And at the end of that journey, right? Where I am today on my journey, things are just a lot more comfortable and they're a lot less scary. And it's not just because I'm not over here like doing prosperity gospel. We don't live in a big house. Our cars are 12 years old. Like, but we don't care. We don't need that stuff. Like luxury doesn't it doesn't connect with me. It's not for me. I am a quality time person. So I want time, freedom, and then I have like what I need for us to sustain ourselves. So for me, that's another thing. I'm not letting anyone else tell me what I should value. I'm checking in with myself about what I value and like my family, because like we're in it together. But it's like, what are our collective values? What's important to us? What are the things we want to do with our lives? What do we want to accomplish? And then we build our life around those values instead of listening to any of the other noise and input coming from other people. Because it's like, do not take advice from someone whose life you would not want to have, full stop. But anyway, yes, kind of
You,
getting off track, but
you
yeah.
said so many amazing things, and I love it because this podcast is for those transitioning from quote unquote, 3D to the 5D, and really people who are stepping into their purpose, figuring out there's more to life than what they've been told. Their beliefs are being shifted and changed, and they're moving into this space where they are connecting more with the unseen world and maybe shifting from leaving their jobs and maybe starting their business and getting the courage to do that. And so someone like you
Mhm.
who's been in it for 13 years, maybe someone like me who's been in it. I started my business 2.5 years ago. So it's been, I'm like a newer little solopreneur entrepreneur, but I love what you said about the reciprocity with the energy exchange, because without verbally speaking this, that is what I did, like your process. And I think it is really important because when I was first learning like coaching, I was in this coaching program and I was charging, like I was in the program, you needed X amount of hours, but you had to charge. And she's like, well, you could charge normal rates. I think she told us like 100 an hour or something, and then she's like, or you could charge $1. It has to be something because there is this like, there needs to be this energy shift. And I think I was charging like $11 and I would be so drained after. And so
Mhm.
for me, I realized two things. One, I needed to increase my prices and feel safe within them. So just the process that you shared is really beautiful. And two, I like what you said about kind of shifting the offer and what's more in alignment with you. But what I did as well was I marketed in a way that would only attract like this niche energy or this
Mhm.
niche, like who I wanted. Cause there were the people who you were saying, the martyrs, the victims, not necessarily that they weren't my aligned clients. I just don't think they were energetically where I could meet them. And maybe
Right.
that was a role of like a therapist who's really trained, or maybe that's a role for someone else who's still helping with what they needed to experience in order to kind of be where I could support them with the
Exactly.
Akashic
Yeah, yeah.
records. And so I thought, yeah, that was so beautiful what you mentioned.
Totally. Well, and it's no, it's what you're saying is real. Also about so I full disclosure, I am not like a marketing person. I have tried to learn about it, but it's like it's written in Greek. It just like it doesn't compute to me somehow. So I'm like, I'm just going to say what I want to say. Like hopefully this is fine, you know. But there is some truth to what you're saying about who is coming into your world and who you can actually help. That's some realness. Being in this industry, for lack of a better term, you're going to come across all types of people in all different places, right? But I think some people at the beginning of their journey, you just want to take everybody because you want to help everybody. Also, you want to make some money. So, like, all of that's kind of knit together. But I have learned the hard way, not because I'm a genius or something. It's like I learned through experience that saying yes to whoever shows up is definitely not the way, because you will find that the cost, whatever it may be, ends up being way more than you actually want to or have the capacity to give when it's not a match. And so, in spiritual look, it's different if you're like washing cars, but we are doing soul work. And so that compatibility is really, really important because you will feel it. You can feel it as the practitioner, and your client can tell too when it's not actually a match. And then you have a real hard time together. And in the best case scenario, everyone's just wasting their time. And in the worst case scenario, you can actually cause harm in that situation when what people need is something you can't provide, or they may need a different kind of practitioner who can help them in a more nuts and bolts way, you know? I think what's been hard about this is that sometimes what people need isn't spiritual guidance. It's like they need housing. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's really something that we cannot provide. That's the real hang up. And it's like if people can find stability, they will thrive and they will be just fine. But I don't it's I want to choose my language. It's not like staying in your lane as much as it is using your discernment and understanding that the serve, like how you can serve and how you can best help others, you can feel it. You know when it's a match and when something's working and when it's not. And so people who have been in the game for a longer period of time, you will see them talking about how they say no to people in a way that feels fair. A lot of people have a referral network actually that they kind of keep active so that if they aren't the one to help this person, they know someone who can. So that is a way of really gently doing this and helping send people to the right match or the right connection, you know. But that's a really important part of this too, because I think there's ego work to be done there. I think some of us want to be able to help everybody. Um, but, so like there's something there too. It's like you can't.
Yeah.
You can't, you know,
And
but doesn't mean you're not doing exactly the right thing.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I did right away. People would talk about marketing, and if from on this podcast, I market through the Akashic Records. Like I talk to the ocean and I call in my clients. Like I similar where like marketing, they're always like, oh, you got to speak this certain way and like you'll get this amount of money. And I'm like, that doesn't super like resonate with me.
Yeah.
But definitely, being my authentic self, I know will bring in those aligned clients. And in the beginning, I did this in the very beginning, the first year. I was rejecting clients because I was like, it just didn't feel right. And I would
Mhm.
have those moments where I'd be like frustrated after a session and I'm like, no, this isn't right. And I'm so glad I did trust that because I feel like now I'm very much in that space where I have like quote unquote my niche clients. Like I feel like every single person I have is like so like I'm inspired by them, they're inspired by me, and I feel like there is this like soul connection that I am having with them, which I am super grateful for. And you articulated it so beautifully, like how to get there, if someone is kind of like trying to figure that out still. And I love what you said about like your quality time is like your value. And this is something I've done recently where I've like redefined my level of success, and spaciousness and integration and rituals are like my key to like my nourishment, my soul's nourishment. Like I do need this like self reflection time, and so I've created a business where I create my own schedule and I don't start until 10 o'clock because I like to wake up and I like to drink my lemon water before I have breakfast, before I have my matcha cocoa, like cacao. Like I have this like ritual, this like 2 to 3 hour ritual I want to do before I see other people. And so I think, yeah, it's about figuring out what is really important to you and how can you align your life more fully to that.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Well, because really, it's not going to be the same for you and anyone else, but you know what's happening in your internal experience in a way no one else is going to while we're embodied. Maybe someone can tune into you. But let's think about like the partners we choose. We don't always choose partners that can tune into everything, right? So, in a sense, it's like you ultimately have the answers that you're seeking. And we work with other people to do this because we can be really good mirrors of one another, or we can activate one another through a reframing, through a shift in perspective. Together, we can do really good work, not because one person has the question and the other person has the answer. It's because you have the answer and are trying to like spin your vision around so you can see it. It's like you're getting assistance. So in a way, all of us are just supporting one another in reaching alignment and achieving self-knowledge. And that's what we're all doing. So in a sense, like your morning ritual, I resonate very deeply with that. We could not have this conversation at 8:30 in the morning, So like definitely feeling that. But okay, so there's this idea that I love. I'll be really brief. So when we're younger, we get taught to kind of pick a career that we want and then to try to build our lifestyle around the career or whatever. But there's another concept called lifestyle design, which begins with the lifestyle you want to be living. So you connect with this really strong vision that you have figured out of like how you want your days to be. Not just like I want to have this house and this car. That's not what I'm talking about. Your day, like your schedule in your day. What is that? What do you actually want that to look like? And once you have that vision really strong, then you start building all the other pieces around it. So the way you build your business, the way you build whatever way you make income, maybe it's not business, maybe it's something else. But the point is you're actually crafting that around the lifestyle you want. And the lifestyle is the thing that is sacred and the thing that is being protected. And it's just a reframe. Because again, this is not something that Western modern society ever has taught us. And if nothing, it's just a fun thing to experiment with, to say, well, maybe I'll just like play with this idea. But if I play with it, what do I come up with? And you might be, I mean, not you because you're doing it anyway, but it's like everyone who's listening, it's like, I'm really curious about what new ideas come up when you start to just reframe this idea and focus around the life you want to have, even more so than the work you want to do. In a sense, in the spiritual realm, your purpose, like your spiritual function, kind of has a way of happening even if you're not paying attention. I laugh about this because it's like when I'm not doing client work, like when I was finishing my dissertation, I was not taking clients. But guess what? I would call a plumber to come fix the sink. And when he fixed the sink, he will sit down at my kitchen table and tell me about his wife, his goals for the future, trying to work through his mother wounds and everything else. So just see what I'm saying? It just happens anyway. I just want to get my sink fixed, but the work shows up. Okay. So it's like, in a sense, thinking about what you want your embodied experience to be like is a different place to begin. If the work is a given and the mission's already taken care of, what else is there to play with now?
Ah, Rosa, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And for all the listeners out there, where can they find you and what are you offering right now?
Sure. So I am most active on Threads and Instagram. My handle is It's Rosa Hope. But I also have a website, rosa-hope.com, where you can find all my offerings. I do live events in person and online pretty regularly, like once or twice a month. So I am around. Also, like, I'm an open book. So feel free to like slide into my DMs, ask questions, tag me. I love being a part of like the larger conversation in our community. So yeah, definitely feel free to reach out.
So beautiful. And I'll write everything in the show notes. And where are you located? I know we met in like Find a Guest podcast
Oh
Facebook group,
yeah.
so
No,
I don't even know.
I'm in North Carolina. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. So
So East
what city?
Coast.
Okay,
Oh, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. Yeah.
perfect. So if anyone's over there, Rosa is available. So thank you so much, Rosa. This has been just such a delight, such a rich conversation. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for co-creating this wonderful space with me.
Totally. Thank you for having me, Danny. Like, I'm so glad we finally got to get together. And I don't know, I'm sending you so many well wishes for all the new things that you're doing and creating right now.
Thank you.